Using a spoon to tap his wine glass, Andrew announced, "I have an announcement to make." As everyone turned to see my 7-year spouse, the chatter at my parents' packed dinner table became silent. His eyes moved towards my sister, Jenna, and then settled someplace over everyone's heads. I saw the little quiver in his hand as I closely observed his face. My pulse beat steadily, showing no signs of the months-long knowledge I had been holding. He went on, "Vivian and I are getting divorced," his tone becoming more certain. "I hadn't planned to announce it this way, but since everyone's together." My mum let out a gasp. Aunt Patricia covered her heart with her palm. My dad's thick brows furrowed with perplexity. After saying, "There's more," Andrew extended his hand across the table to grasp Jenna's. "I've fallen in love with Jenna. Even if we've been fighting it for years, love might still pick you." The only sound to break the stunned quiet that ensued was my mother whispering, "Oh my God." Everyone looked at me, anticipating the inevitable outburst, crying, sobbing, maybe the flinging of my mother's fine crockery. Rather, with a composed nod, I added, "Please, everyone, check your emails right now." My name is Vivian Ha Yes. He is 32, now works for a cybersecurity company in Seattle as a digital forensics specialist. Rebuilding digital evidence, tracing electronic footprints, and recording digital patterns of behavior are all part of my profession. I'm patient, meticulous, and competent at what I do. My goal was straightforward, a committed marriage based on integrity and respect for one another. My younger sister, Jenna, and my husband, Andrew, were in my way, as if they had determined that their pleasure was more important than mine. They weren't the only ones affected by the injustice. It was the complex deceit that went along with it. The lies were told to our whole family, not just to me. The revision of our common past to excuse their treachery. The presumption that, in their well-crafted story, I would be the blind-sided victim. Emails. With a look of perplexity on his face, Andrew inquired, "What emails?" I responded by taking out my own phone and said, "I sent them just before dinner. Everyone should have received them by now." Family members tentatively grabbed their phones around the table. David, my cousin, opened his email first, and as he read through the contents, his eyes widened. For the second time that night, my mother gasped and followed, putting her palm to her mouth. "What have you done?" Pale-faced, Jenna snarled and reached for her own phone. Andrew's uneasiness increased as he glanced from me to his unopened email. "Vivian, whatever this is, it's just documentation," I impartially said. "Something I'm particularly good at." The faces around the table changed from astonishment at the news to something more sinister when additional family members viewed their emails. Disapproval, anger, disappointment, not aimed at me, but at Jenna and Andrew. None of them had yet to realize that the emails they were reading only included a small portion of the evidence I had gathered. With the possible exception of Andrew and Jenna, nobody at this table could have imagined the entire extent of the treachery. Andrew and I met during a charity fundraiser for the Seattle Children's Hospital 8 years ago. He was a pediatric anesthesiologist, dedicated and compassionate. I was there representing my company, which had donated cybersecurity services to the hospital. Our connection was immediate and intense. Within a year, we were married in a small ceremony in my parents' backyard. Those early years were beautiful. We bought a craftsman bungalow in Queen Anne and spent weekends renovating it together. Andrew's work schedule was demanding, but he always made time for us, surprise weekend getaways, cooking elaborate Sunday breakfasts, leaving little notes in my laptop bag. I'd never felt more secure or more loved. Jenna had always been the restless one in our family, dropping out of college twice, moving between cities, changing careers with dizzying frequency. When she moved back to Seattle 3 years ago after another failed attempt at finding herself in Denver, I was the one who suggested she stay with us until she found her footing. Andrew was hesitant at first. "Are you sure? "It might change our dynamic," he said. "She's my sister," I replied. "Family helps family." What was meant to be a 2-month stay stretched into 6. Jenna quickly found a job at a local art gallery, but claimed she couldn't afford Seattle's rental prices. I didn't mind. I'd always wanted to be closer to my sister, and her presence seemed to fill a gap I hadn't realized existed in our home. Looking back, I see the warning signs I missed. How Andrew began working later shifts, how Jenna would run errands that took hours longer than they should have, how they developed inside jokes I wasn't part of. The occasional tension that would fill a room when I entered, as if I had interrupted something. "You two seem to get along well," my mother commented during a family barbecue, watching Andrew help Jenna set up a badminton net. "Why wouldn't they?" I'd replied, genuinely puzzled. Mom shrugged. "Some men don't get along with their in-laws. You're lucky." I was lucky. My husband and sister had become friends. Our house felt more alive with Jenna's energy. If Andrew sometimes seemed distant, I attributed it to work stress. If Jenna occasionally watched him with a strange intensity, I dismissed it as my imagination. Even after Jenna finally moved into her own apartment, she remained a constant presence in our lives. Sunday dinners, impromptu movie nights, calls for help with household repairs that apparently couldn't wait until I got home from work. "You're too trusting," my friend Heather told me once after witnessing Jenna call Andrew for the 3rd time during our lunch. I wouldn't let my sister get that comfortable with my husband. I had laughed it off. Jenna's just needy. Besides, it's Andrew. The implication was clear. Andrew would never betray me. He was too honest, too devoted, too good. If I occasionally caught him looking at an incoming text and quickly putting his phone away, I told myself not to be paranoid. If he and Jenna sometimes fell silent when I entered a room, I assured myself it was coincidence. Trust, after all, was the foundation of our marriage. The discovery came by accident, as these things often do. 6 months ago, I was using Andrew's laptop to order takeout while he was at work. When I opened the browser, it automatically restored his previous session, including his email. I wasn't looking for anything. I had no suspicions compelling me to snoop, but there it was, a series of messages between Andrew and Jenna. Explicit, unambiguous. "Last night was amazing," Jenna had written. "I can't stop thinking about you." "We need to be more careful," Andrew replied. "I don't want to hurt Viv." I read through the entire thread with a strange detachment, as if I were examining evidence for a case at work, rather than witnessing the collapse of my marriage. The emails stretched back over 2 years. 2 years of deception, carrying on right under my nose. I closed the laptop without ordering dinner. When Andrew came home that night, I searched his face for signs of the stranger I'd discovered. Some indication that the man who kissed my forehead and asked about my day was the same one who had written those messages to my sister. But he looked exactly the same. "You okay?" he asked, noticing my quietness. "Rough day at work." "Just tired," I replied, watching him carefully. How easily the lie came to him. How comfortably he moved through our home, our life, while maintaining this secret. Over the next few days, I found myself oscillating between numbness and devastating pain. I would wake up at 3:00 a.m., heart racing, wondering how I had missed the signs. During daylight hours, I functioned on autopilot, going to work, making dinner, engaging in conversations that now felt scripted and hollow. I didn't confront them immediately. A part of me hoped there was an explanation, something that would make sense of the incomprehensible. Perhaps the emails were just fantasy, never acted upon. Perhaps Andrew had been manipulated somehow. Perhaps I had misunderstood the context. But professional habits die hard. I began documenting, almost unconsciously at first. I noted when Andrew claimed to be working late, but his location showed otherwise. I logged accidental encounters between him and Jenna that seemed too frequent to be coincidence. I matched credit card statements with hotel bookings and restaurant charges. The evidence mounted, irrefutable, and heartbreaking. Not only were they having an affair, but they were extraordinarily careless about it, as if they didn't expect me to notice, or perhaps didn't care if I did. 2 weeks after my initial discovery, I found myself sitting in my car outside an upscale hotel downtown, watching Andrew and Jenna enter together. They were laughing, his hand resting intimately on the small of her back. I took photos mechanically, adding them to my growing file. That night, Andrew came home late, claiming an emergency surgery had kept him at the hospital. I nodded, served him reheated dinner, and listened to his elaborate fiction about a child with a ruptured appendix. "You look exhausted," I said, studying the faint smudge of lipstick on his collar, Jenna's shade. It was intense, he agreed, reaching for my hand across the table. "But I'm home now." The tenderness of the gesture nearly broke me. In that moment, I realized I was living with a perfect stranger, someone capable of looking me in the eye while constructing an alternate reality. The man I had married, the sister I had grown up with, neither existed as I had believed. I withdrew my hand gently. "You should get some rest." That night, as Andrew slept beside me, I made my decision. I wouldn't confront them yet. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of my tears or rage. I would continue gathering evidence, building my case methodically and thoroughly. And when the time came to reveal what I knew, it wouldn't be in private where they could manage the narrative. It would be public, irrefutable, and completely on my terms. For the next 2 months, I lived a double life. During the day, I was Vivian Hayes, devoted wife and loving sister. I attended family gatherings, maintained our home, and continued the routines of our marriage with robotic precision. At night, I became a detective in my own life, meticulously documenting the web of lies that surrounded me. The more I uncovered, the more elaborate their deception proved to be. They had created a shared digital calendar with coded entries to coordinate their meetings. They had a joint credit card I never knew about, used exclusively for their rendezvous. They had even discussed future plans, vacations they would take, a house they hoped to buy once they figured out the Vivian situation. My first attempt at confrontation came after 3 months of surveillance. I approached it strategically, choosing a moment when Andrew was vulnerable, tired after a long shift, slightly mellowed by a glass of wine. "I think we should talk about Jenna," I said casually as we sat on the porch swing one evening. His body tensed infinitesimally. "What about her?" "I've noticed you two seem close." Andrew laughed, the sound slightly forced. "She's your sister. Of course we're close." "No, I mean really close, Andrew." I held his gaze steadily. "Is there something you want to tell me?" For a moment, I thought he might confess. Something flickered in his eyes, recognition, perhaps even guilt. Then his expression hardened. "I don't know what you're suggesting, but I don't appreciate it," he said coolly. "Jenna is family. If you're feeling insecure about something, that's on you." The swift denial and redirection, casting me as the irrational, jealous wife, was so smooth it almost made me doubt my own evidence. Almost. My next approach was more direct. I left browser windows open to hotel confirmations, placed my documented timeline where he might accidentally discover it. Each time, Andrew found ways to explain away the evidence or simply ignored it completely. Meanwhile, Jenna launched her own counteroffensive. She began calling me more frequently, suggesting sister activities with artificial enthusiasm. She introduced me to single men at gallery events, commenting, "Andrew and I both think you work too much. You should date more." The casual cruelty of trying to set me up while sleeping with my husband was breathtaking. The most painful revelation came from my mother, who innocently mentioned, "Jenna has been helping Andrew plan something special for your anniversary. She's been so secretive about it." Mom smiled. "They've been working on the surprise for months." Our anniversary was still 4 months away. The idea that they were using it as a cover for their meetings, manipulating my own mother in their fiction, crystallized something inside me. This wasn't just an affair. It was a systematic campaign to manipulate everyone around us. I decided to force the issue. One evening, I deliberately left evidence of their affair, hotel receipts, screenshots of their messages, on the kitchen counter where Andrew would find them. When he came home, I waited in the living room, prepared for the confrontation that would finally bring everything into the open. Hours passed. Finally, Andrew entered, his expression grave. "We need to talk," he said, sitting across from me. "Yes, we do," I agreed, feeling a strange sense of relief that the charade was ending. "I found something disturbing," he continued, placing a folder on the coffee table between us. I reached for it, expecting to see the evidence I had left for him. Instead, I found printed emails between me and a colleague from work, innocent messages discussing a project edited to appear romantic and incriminating. "I know about David," Andrew said, his voice tight with manufactured pain. "How long has this been going on?" The moment was so surreal I almost laughed. He had fabricated evidence of an affair to accuse me, a perfect distraction from his own betrayal. "There's nothing going on with David," I said calmly. "Those messages are about work, and you know it." "They seem pretty intimate to me," he countered. "All those late nights at the office, it makes sense now." I realized with startling clarity he wasn't just deflecting. He was setting up his justification, creating a narrative where my imagined infidelity had driven him into Jenna's arms. The calculated nature of it chilled me to the bone. "I think we should take some time apart," he said, reaching for my hand with practiced concern. "This isn't healthy for either of us." In that moment, I understood. Direct confrontation would never work. Andrew and Jenna had invested too much in their version of reality. They would deny, deflect, and distort the truth until their fiction became the accepted narrative. Time apart might be good. I agreed, watching relief flood his features. He hadn't expected me to concede so easily. "I'm glad you understand," he said, squeezing my hand. "This isn't about blame. Sometimes people just grow apart." His practiced sympathy was almost admirable. I wondered how many times he'd rehearsed this conversation with Jenna, perfecting his concerned expression in her bathroom mirror. "I'll stay with Jenna while we figure things out," he continued. "She offered her guest room when I told her about the situation." Of course she had. I nodded, playing my assigned role in their script, while mentally shifting to a new phase of my investigation. If Andrew thought my acquiescence meant surrender, he was gravely mistaken. The following week, as Andrew moved some of his things to Jenna's apartment, I took a personal day from work. While they believed I was at the office, I visited a private investigator. Douglas Parker specialized in infidelity cases and had testified in hundreds of divorce proceedings. "I'm not looking to hire you," I explained, spreading my evidence across his desk. "I need a professional assessment of what I've gathered and advice on what else I might need." Douglas reviewed my documentation with impressed surprise. "Most clients come to me with suspicions. You've brought a complete case file." "It's what I do for a living," I replied, "just not usually in my personal life." He confirmed what I already suspected. My evidence was compelling, but could potentially be explained away in isolation. He recommended additional documentation, financial records showing patterns of deception, witness statements from hotel staff, and most importantly, evidence of their intent to mislead rather than just the affair itself. "Intent is powerful in divorce proceedings," he advised. "If you can prove they deliberately plan to deceive you and others, it strengthens your position considerably." I left his office with renewed purpose and a list of resources. Over the next month, I expanded my investigation beyond just documenting the affair. I uncovered financial deceptions I hadn't previously detected. Andrew had been diverting money from our joint savings to a private account for nearly a year. Jenna had charged expenses to my credit card on multiple occasions when I had loaned it to her for emergencies. The most stunning discovery came through Andrew's cloud storage, which automatically backed up his text messages. I found conversations between him and Jenna discussing me in cruel, dismissive terms, mocking my trust, planning how they would present their relationship to our family after the inevitable divorce. "She's so caught up in her work, she hasn't noticed a thing," Andrew had written. "We could probably have sex on the kitchen counter while she's typing away in the next room." "She'll probably thank us for making the decision for her," Jenna replied. "She never really knew how to be a proper wife anyway." Reading their casual cruelty transformed something within me. The numbness that had protected me gave way to a cold, clarifying anger. This wasn't just betrayal. It was systematic emotional abuse, a coordinated effort to undermine my reality while preserving their self-image. I began preparing for the endgame. Divorce was inevitable, but it would happen on my terms, not theirs. I consulted with Diana Wright, the most respected divorce attorney in Seattle, who reviewed my evidence with clinical precision. "This is exceptional documentation," she said. "Most clients bring me tissues and accusations. You've brought receipts, literal and figurative." "What should I expect?" I asked. "With what you've provided? A favorable settlement, certainly. But Washington is a no-fault state. The courts won't punish them for the affair itself." "I'm not looking for legal punishment," I clarified. "I want the truth recognized. I want their narrative dismantled." Diana studied me thoughtfully. "The court of public opinion can be more punishing than any legal judgment. If that's your aim, you need to consider carefully how and when you present this evidence." Her words crystallized my approach. Andrew and Jenna had orchestrated a public fiction. The appropriate response was public truth delivered in a way they couldn't control or rewrite. As I left Diana's office, my phone buzzed with a text from my mother. "Family dinner at our house this Sunday. Your father's birthday. Andrew and Jenna both confirmed. Please come. Don't make it awkward." The perfect stage had presented itself. All the players would be gathered, expecting to manage the narrative of my failing marriage and their blossoming love. They had no idea I was no longer following their script. I spent the next 3 days meticulously preparing my presentation. Each email was tailored to its recipient, containing only the information relevant to them. For my father, evidence of how Andrew had borrowed money from him while simultaneously diverting funds to his secret account. For my mother, proof of how Jenna had used her to establish alibis. For my aunts and cousins, documentation of the specific lies told to each of them. The final touch was a master email to myself that contained everything: the complete timeline, all evidence, and a detailed account of my discovery process. This would be my reference during the inevitable chaos that would follow. On Sunday morning, I woke with strange serenity. I dressed carefully in a simple blue dress that Andrew had always complimented. I styled my hair, applied light makeup, and adorned myself with the pearl earrings my grandmother had left me, a talisman of her strength that I desperately needed. As I prepared to leave, my phone chimed with a text from Jenna. "Just checking you're coming tonight. Dad would be heartbroken if you didn't show. We're all family after all." The casual audacity nearly broke my composure. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that in a few hours their fiction would collapse under the weight of irrefutable evidence. I arrived at my parents' home precisely on time, bearing a homemade cake and a carefully wrapped gift for my father. The familiar sounds of family gathering enveloped me as I stepped inside: laughter from the living room, the clatter of dishes in the kitchen, the low murmur of sports commentary from the television. Andrew and Jenna were already there, seated side by side on the sofa. They had maintained a pretense of casual friendship in family settings, but now, with the truth of their relationship about to be unveiled, they sat slightly closer than before, testing the waters of their public couplehood. "Vivian," my mother greeted me with a tight hug. I'm so glad you came. This means so much to your father." I returned her embrace, breathing in her familiar perfume, wondering how she would look at me after reading my email, if she would recognize the strength it had taken to endure these months of deception. The dinner proceeded with excruciating normalcy. We ate my mother's pot roast and discussed safe topics: the weather, my cousin's new baby, my father's retirement plans. I participated mechanically, watching Andrew and Jenna exchange glances across the table, clearly anticipating the moment they had planned. As dessert was served, Andrew cleared his throat and tapped his glass. I felt a chill of déjà vu, recognizing the gesture from countless family gatherings when he'd made announcements: job promotions, our engagement, the purchase of our home. Moments that had once filled me with pride, now revealed as steps in a relationship built on quicksand. What I hadn't anticipated was a last-minute complication. Just as Andrew began to speak, my phone buzzed with an alert from my email scheduling system. Delivery failed. Server error. A quick check confirmed my worst fear. The carefully timed emails had not been sent. While Andrew launched into his prepared speech about difficult decisions and unexpected love, I frantically tried to resend the emails. The server response was clear: temporary outage, estimated recovery time unknown. I felt a moment of pure panic. My entire plan hinged on those emails arriving simultaneously with Andrew's announcement. Without them, I would indeed be cast as the blindsided, pitiful wife they expected me to be. Andrew was reaching the climax of his speech, his hand now openly holding Jenna's. My family watched with expressions ranging from shock to discomfort to pity, exactly the reaction they had anticipated. I had seconds to decide: walk out in apparent defeat, confront them without my evidence. Neither option was acceptable. Then I realized there was a third option. I had brought my laptop as backup. All the evidence was there, organized and ready. With calm determination, I opened it under the table and navigated to my email program. As Andrew finished speaking and all eyes turned expectantly toward me, I pressed send on a single email to everyone present, with all attachments included. "Please, everyone," I said into the stunned silence, "check your emails right now." The choreography of the next few moments was almost beautiful in its precision. Phones chimed in succession around the table as my email arrived. Confused glances were exchanged before, one by one, family members opened the message. "I've prepared some additional context for Andrew's announcement," I explained calmly, watching Andrew's confident smile falter. "Just some documentation I thought everyone should have." My father was the first to react, his face darkening as he scrolled through his phone. My cousin David whispered, "Holy shit," under his breath. My mother set her phone down with trembling hands, looking between Jenna and me with dawning horror. "What is this?" Andrew demanded, reaching for his own phone. "It's the truth," I replied simply. "Everything I've discovered over the past 6 months, organized for clarity, hotel receipts, text messages, financial records, the complete history of your relationship with my sister." Jenna lunged for her phone, her face draining of color as she opened the email. "These are private conversations. You had no right." "They're conversations about me," I corrected, "about how to deceive me, about how pathetic and oblivious I am. I particularly enjoyed the exchange where you discussed whether to tell me before or after Christmas and decided that ruining her holiday would be cruel." Andrew was frantically scrolling through the evidence, his planned narrative of star-crossed lovers disintegrating with each swipe. "This is invasion of privacy," he sputtered. "You can't just—" "Actually, I can," I interrupted. "Washington is a one-party consent state for recordings. Our shared accounts were, well, shared, and most of this information was gathered from devices and accounts you left open, often in our home." The room had fallen into stunned silence, broken only by the occasional gasp as someone reached a particularly damning piece of evidence. You plan to announce this tonight, I continued, my voice steady. You choreographed this moment to control the narrative, the reluctant lovers, the difficult decision, the clean break. You just didn't expect me to have a narrative of my own. My mother found her voice first. Jenna, how could you do this to your sister? I had been working for months to bring about this change in perspective, and it was occurring. Their well-crafted fiction was rewritten. As Andrew struggled to recover control of the situation, his doctor's authority came to the fore. Using a clinical tone, he stated, "This is obviously Vivian's method of processing a challenging transition. She's created this elaborate." "Stop talking, Andrew," my father said in a stern voice. "My daughter doesn't make up proof. It is her actual line of work. When faced with a challenge, Jenna's first instinct was to cry. She wept. I never meant to hurt anyone. It simply occurred. Who you fall in love with is beyond your control." My cousin David interrupted, holding out his phone. "It looks like you've been planning this for more than 2 years based on your texts. That isn't only occurring." As more family members took in the information, the chorus of criticism intensified. My mother, who was unable to stop gazing at Jenna as though she were witnessing a stranger, was being consoled by Aunt Patricia. Andrew was being asked difficult questions by Uncle James on the financial irregularities that were indicated in the emails. I said nothing, letting the inevitable events play out. I didn't have anything else to say after months of preparation, analysis, and documentation. The evidence was unmistakable and unequivocal. I picked up my handbag and got up. "I should go," I muttered. "Dad, I'm sorry about your birthday dinner." My dad got up right away. "I'll walk you out." He gave me a tight embrace outside. He responded, "I had no idea what you've been going through," in an emotionally charged voice. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" I clarified, I needed to understand it first, and I needed everyone else to understand it too, not just believe me. My phone was flooded with texts from family members as I was leaving, words of astonishment, solidarity, and support. I switched it off, enjoying the quiet. I filed for divorce the next morning. Through the deliberate presenting of reality, rather than through dramatic confrontation, Andrew and Jenna's attempts to control the narrative had entirely fallen apart. When I signed the final divorce documents 3 months later, my attorney inquired as to whether I was happy with the result. "Sincerely, I don't feel satisfaction," I answered, "just clarity." I had made a living by finding digital proof of human behavior. I never thought that chronicling my own failing marriage would be my best case. Professionals, however, make use of their resources. Ultimately, systematic recording had achieved what emotional confrontation was never able to. Truth has taken the place of deceit. I moved into my new flat with a view of Puget Sound that evening after packing the rest of my things. At the end of a procedure that had taken up over a year of my life, I erased the investigative files from my computer as the sun sank over the lake. The first page of a new chapter would begin tomorrow, one that I wrote totally by hand.